Thanks very much for joining me on the show. How are you?
Good, yourself?
Good, good. So you are the CEO and founder of ReSecurity.
That's correct.
So first of all, let me just say, I think it's a really cool name, just by its simplicity. Really, really cool name. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to forget that name. Why don't we, just to clean up palettes, just to walk me through memory lane. You've done quite a bit before founding the company, and maybe like to start with just what were you doing in the early days?
Can you
What
hear
was
me?
your career path like? And then why did you decide to jump on the kind of the
Okay,
deep
so it's not
end
my
and,
network.
and be a founder of a new company?
What
I
happened?
think, I don't know, it just froze. Do you have something running on your machine?
No,
Okay. So I don't know, it just froze. Maybe it's the network on my end. I don't know. But
yeah, it's working fine. Oh,
where did I lose you?
uh,
A memory lane. Memory lane.
oh, ReSecurity.
And then memory lane, I ask you, like, you've done quite a bit before founding the company. So
Mm.
walk me through memory lane, like how you started. What was your interest in technology like? What was your path? What fork in the road did you take?
Well, wow, that's a very, very long. A lot of times people always comment about the fact that I change jobs a lot, and I always tell them like, well, that's how you kind of, get elevated in your position and get paid correctly, because I think part of our industry today, as well as technology, we spend so much time trying to trying to do our job and getting paid correctly and making sure we're bringing the right people. And I think, a lot of times we forget where we come from, right? Mentoring somebody who actually took took us on and then raised us and grow us. And we're not doing the same thing nowadays, and everybody's looking for sure. For me at least, I started my journey very young. I think I was like, literally in college when I started taking the CNE class. And I spent the first 15 years running data centers and running, developing, technology as an IT person. And then after 9/11, I kind of I wouldn't say jump ship. I think a lot of us who's been, managing AS400 and DEX, I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what that is, or Token Ring, went to, and like, you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. Then we, after 9/11, we just kind of, as I think, as either you either serve or you help protect the country. And I think a lot of us kind of transitioned into that role in cybersecurity. And I was very fortunate, even during the transition, where I had good, managers and director who helped me transition, or saw the information security as a critical component, and then start building it up. And then I transitioned over into, I think, DXC now, before it was called Computer Sciences Corporation, and then spent the next 15 years strengthening organizations from Warner Brothers, Sony, and so on. Sony after the breach. Okay, so just want to make sure I was in there doing. Everybody
Well, you
asks,
know, you don't want to take credit for that.
it's, I don't, having been there, I have to honestly say, this could have happened to anybody. And it also taught us a lot of lesson about resilience, and also making sure people who are accountable are doing the right thing all the time. And a lot of times we hide away from these exposures or events. But the reality is the cyber, like, kind of threat landscape is hasn't really morphed. I know people always talk about like nation state APT and all this stuff, but the reality is like, 97, 98% of it is a criminal act, and we're just taking advantage of it. It's a sad thing. And then I think in 2019, I started the company a lot earlier, but the reality is I was an investor and advisor, but not really operating it. In 2019, I just kind of took the big leap of faith and just, became the CEO and started ReSecurity.
And if you don't mind, I'd just like to double click on a couple of things you mentioned. And I'm trying to keep it all in order. One, I think you're onto something about jumping from different roles to get what you were worth. So I
Mm,
want that to linger. I also would say that there's a certain learning mm, curve that
mm,
happens, I would say, the first 3, 6, 9 months on
mm,
the role, on the job, where
mm,
you learn and absorb, and it's really tough, and you grow as individuals and professionally as well. And then after that, it's somewhat plateaus.
mm,
So I think if the fact of the matter, when you jump from role to role, you actually you can absorb all that knowledge, all that experience, the new experience, and then you move on to the next one, which exponentially increases the trajectory as a professional growth.
mm.
But on the flip side, and I don't know if it's frowned upon today. I mean, people move around. I don't know if it's as prolific to think, oh, this person just jumps around. I think, and you are CEO now of a company. Would you hire somebody that you've seen them move to from different roles to different roles for companies, or you just only look at their qualifications and what they can bring to your organization? I'm just curious.
I would honestly say I don't look at their qualification or experience. I think when you start talking to them, whether they have no experience or little experience or a lot of experience, if they don't have that interpersonal skills and willingness to learn and I feel like the person is going to contribute to the organization or the team, that's kind of my line in the sand. I think kind of what you laid it out, right? The most important thing in any executive position or management position is to understand the business needs and collaborating with IT. Nothing is going to get done unless you collaborate with it. And a lot of times we are so focused on cybersecurity technologies, all these tools and stuff that nobody really cares if you don't understand how the business runs. And, even for me, working at a company like Symantec, working for some of the great leaders like John Thompson and so forth, I was able to really learn. And I believe it or not, most of my actual knowledge came from my sales team when I was at Symantec because they taught me how to understand the customer. We call it customer intelligence, but the reality is what do you know about their business? What is their need? Not just technology or cyber, but understanding their personality and the needs of the business and trying to solve those difficult problems, not necessarily trying to place a service or technology onto it. That mindset is what I did best, what I used in kind of where I was elevating into different roles and as well as, expanding our business within resecurity as well.
And it's amazing too, because I think it's easy to focus on technologies you mentioned that is secondary. People don't really care too much about the technology, even the underlying technology. They want it to work, really. They want to solve the problem. They want it to work. And then I find a lot of times you meet someone and then you don't spend the time and effort to really understand where they're coming from and the business issues that are underlying the issues and they may not be telling you this right up front. It's
Mm.
something you have to kind of uncover. So
Yeah.
it's really remarkable. So that process of uncovering and having that conversation it's soft skills but hard skills, meaning it's
Yeah.
hard skills. How did
No,
you train people to think that way? You had the liberty to work with an amazing team at Symantec,
mm,
which was by itself very iconic at the time. How would you recommend for somebody who either gets in the industry right now or wants to elevate their skill set to, let's assume that they put the technical things aside and they're proficient in that, but how do you again elevate your skill set to become a master at problem solving and understanding the customer's issues?
I think, it's kind of like a marriage, right? You just got to listen and listen thoroughly. I'm not the greatest, but I try. And I think that's one of the things that we fail to do. We need to do a better job. Uh, we're we're always listening on the person to make your points instead of just listening throughout the whole thing. And you're just waiting for to make a comment and listening to them for your cue. The reality is that we need to just listen, absorb, and not try to solve every problem, but just hear them out first. And I think that goes with any kind of relationships. And I think the most important part about it is, especially if you're trying to come into this industry, a lot of times you got to kind of get your egos out. Like, forget about what you know because you don't know everything. And let's just be realistic in cyber. What's really new and advanced and, pretty things that we've seen? It's the same thing we've seen now. It's almost 20 years ago. Network security is network security. Endpoint is endpoint. It's
You're
not
you're gonna get a lot of haters for in the vendor side.
a,
What do you mean it's the same thing? We're selling the best of breed, next generation.
sure, sure. One of the, when I was one of my previous employers, I had some team members from our corporate office who were brilliant national security, war fighters for protecting our country. And he taught me one of the most important lesson of, like, you could do anything in this world, but if you don't have good patching, good vulnerability management, and good hardening, nothing's going to matter, because all those are things that's going to happen. And I think even as a vendor and manufacturer of technologies and software, we often forget that, what is the mission that the customer is trying to accomplish? Not just about compliance, not just about, having security theater and, follow the bouncy balls, right? I think we need to go back to the basics of how we used to be when we were like in the 1990s, right, or 80s, of just hardening, QSEC offer from AS400 and just locking that down. I mean, let's be realistic. How many times have we heard AS400 being breached?
Well, it's right now it's security by obscurity. I
Yeah,
think just that's
yeah.
where I think where we come in, and we come back to the fundamentals because I would like to dwell on it a little bit more. But I also wanted to come and just double click on another topic you mentioned, which is really interesting. So we're post 9/11 memorial events that happened just recently,
hmm
and you alluded to it during that intro. You mentioned that there was a sense of feeling that everybody had that they had to step up and promote national security. You, as an IT professional, cybersecurity professional, IT security professional at the time, you felt the same.
hmm
Talk to me about that collective feelings that you had and how it manifested itself in the years post 9/11, if you can.
Yeah. And wow. I mean, I remember, industry organizations like ISSA, all of those, like, I don't even remember even ISC Square was even available. I think the most important was like PMBOK, right? Project Managed Book of Knowledge. But like when we started seeing all of these, certificates and associations start up, I think that was a good start. But for me, I think if they always tell me that I'm one of the grandfathers of InfraGard. And I think we, as a individual and professional, have our own personal kind of journey. I wouldn't say personal objective, right? But I'll be honest with you, and anybody that knows me will tell you, like any country I go, they'll tell you, it's like, look, I will tell you first and foremost, America comes first. And our national security comes first and foremost. We're an American company, and that's always going to be non-questionable. And I think a lot of times we look at, what we're trying to do as a, U.S. citizen. We forget that everything we do contributes to our freedom. And a lot of times we're just, it's about money or position or role. But there are some of us still left that, really cares about what happens, you know, in the globally and as a profession and so forth. It was even when Richard Clark, when he was with CPA CIA, before it was DHS with, Chertoff, right? I mean, he had a great plan, right? Protecting America. I mean, that plan, in which precedes the whole, what is that called? Patriot Act and all those things. No matter what people say about it, I know the whole privacy. Let's not talk about privacy with all the social media. The reality is that there's a I wouldn't say unwritten rule, but there are things that must be done in order to protect our country and the businesses and everything else. I don't want to get political, but the reality is we are falling behind, and we need to do a better job in making sure that we have the right resources here. We're able to make America things, made things in America as well as, but also leveraging world economics. I think that's the key thing. And we gotta just kind of look at everything, both economically and professionally, because we have a global marketplace.
Absolutely. And how do you feel that it contradicts or maybe conflicts with American being very individual.
Mm.
Individualism is almost like in the pillars of our society, how everybody just care about themselves, they, first and foremost, and then the collective, we, as long as we're good, we don't really care too much about anybody else. Or does it? Or maybe after September 11th, there was more of this collective mindset to realize, okay, we were part of a bigger picture, and we have to take care of others. We have to collectively chime in and help each other to be more secure in this particular case.
Yeah, I mean, you sound like Alexis de Tocqueville, right? Democracy in America. I traveled extensively last year, visiting various countries, and believe it or not, any place I've gone outside of America, we see the people and their nationalism. And what I was surprised is when I came back, how much lack of there was. And I don't, nationalism is anything negative, but it's the fact that there are things that we do that we should think about because, a lot of times we take a lot of things for granted. And I know there's a need for, I mean, this is the part of capitalism, right? But there's, I think, the balance. And we see some companies where they're reinvesting back in, investing. And this goes back to the resources, what you talked about. We have to invest back into our team and our company, not, self-promotion and self-fulfilling only goes so far in the long run. And, I myself was, at fault for that. And many times I wouldn't say I was like the greatest manager or people manager. I made lots and lots of mistakes, and I only where I am today because of that.
And is the reliance on technology, the fact that people now get laid off through Zoom or through text messages, or because we're so used to just having digital conversations, quote unquote, and we lose sight of the personal touch among people, is maybe that's some of the driver behind this? Because again, I think even what we're doing now is not trivial. If you look at the younger generations, I don't know if they're capable of having face-to-face conversations, real conversations about topics, and we don't have to agree, but we have a dialogue. And I think that's maybe collectively that's where we're losing as a nation. We don't have those dialogues. It's everybody's so polar, right? They are like you make decisions, and then you're like butt heads, but you butt heads online.
Yeah.
Well, but you butt heads online, and you just kind of like tell somebody off, not in front of their face, but you just made a comment, and then you walk away. Like, you do that online. And then these people, I don't know if they would have said the same thing if they were in front of the person.
Yep. And their lives are challenge to social media and our electronic ways of doing things, of not being, you perfectly laid it out. Like you could say whatever on the line, but can you say it in their face, right? I mean, I have a son with autism, and I always tell him, like, don't say anything that you can't say in their face. Very simple. My nephews and niece, they don't use social media, and they're in the teens. That's because my brother is very pedantic and draconian in a lot of ways. But I think, we need to really. I was watching Ready Player One. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, and they had this thing where they had this place called Oasis, and it was like a virtual world, and everybody just lived their whole lives there. But the new owner decided that twice a week that it'll be shut down for people to actually have a physical interaction. And I think it goes a long way about what we should be talking to social media companies and our families about, which is to really minimize this and really get back to, go playing soccer, having, softballs. Because if we don't stop communicating electronically, I mean, it's an efficiency thing. It's a quick thing, but it's never supposed to be a conversation. And we need to start educating our kids and our students and, businesses to start moving away and build that personal relationship. Because otherwise, we're just going to be a nation of one.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you run your business today, I'm assuming when I meet with businesses and I talk to executives like yourself, it's really remarkable. You take the DNA of the executives, and then the company itself, it's a reflection of the founder. It's like I think it's just by, and you're laughing because you know it's true. It's like maybe the people that you hire or the people that maybe stick around that company, they either adopt and buy into that
Yeah.
DNA, or they get spat out because they don't fit. But it's good and bad. You have companies that are horrible, absolutely
Mm.
horrible to deal with, and you talk to the person at the receptionist or receptionist, right? So they are a certain way, and then you talk to the executive, and you find out it's exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So there's this the whole slew of the ladder is the same. So talk to me about what you do in your microcosmos of running a company, and how do you adopt some of these values that you have? Because you obviously have strong values related to that.
Well, it's like having a garden, right? You're gonna plant different kind of trees in, but it's gonna be in the same garden, so you need to build that harmony. Our method is this kind of ties into what you said. You know, before COVID, we all decided to be completely remote. So for us, it was easy transition. But as we grew after COVID and previous 3 years, we started seeing that everybody has an individual mentality or their thought making assumptions. So between the management team, I took it upon myself. And, I didn't really have a schedule, to be honest with you. I literally went on a three sprints where I traveled to every country where our clients are, where we're expanding, where our teams were, spent extended amount of times, and so that they could actually see what I do, how I present, who I am, what I do in, also personal things. And that really helped people to understand that, like, look, it's top down. There is no such thing as like, we have a title. Everybody works. And I guess that's kind of our DNA.
And it's tough though to delegate. I think at some point in time, because you're like, let's say you're a professional, you do your things really well, but then you have to trust somebody else that may be over 5,000 miles away
Mhm.
to be the extension of you. How do
Yeah.
you build that trust in your employees, making sure that they carry the name of Reed Security and are a great representation of that and the idea behind the company, and still do that remotely without you being there? Because once you leave, it's whatever's left is on a cruise control of it, so you can't control that.
So I would say anybody that makes an excuse about not being able to see their team or do this is just completely nonsense. 1997, when I worked for Coca-Cola Enterprises, we had this person. His name was Henry Schimberg, and he's the CEO of Coca-Cola. And he would literally go on to ride-alongs with people, go to the stores, meet with the customers, because he started out at Coca-Cola as a truck driver, and he became the CEO. What he taught us was that there is always enough time for you to reinvest your time into your staff. If you business is business going to run however it wants to run. But if they don't see you, nobody is ever going to follow and do exactly what you say or what you do. Meaning, the most important thing about, I think, company business culture is that the person that's leading the company, the visionary or the strategic, whatever you want to call it, is seen as the person that is doing what everybody has either done or doing and will be doing, so that they could understand and relate. Without that relatable things, how can you say, like, like, imagine like some CEO writing to, his line staff of software engineers or contractors or in, Mexico, and saying like, I understand, I appreciate all your hard work. I know the environment. How do you know this? You go vacation in Cancun or Cabo and you're not going to tell me you understand Mexico, right? Like, you have to be there. And fortunately or unfortunately, when I was out in the field with the team, meeting with, various people and organization, I'm very heavily invested in hiring within the country. So whether it's Africa, Middle East, Central, South, anywhere, we're very focused on that, but also working with the university to build our next generation of warfighters in that workbench in the country, because we can't just push American mentality into this country and say, yeah, American made, go buy it. No, you have to have the right people and kind of bring that together.
In when you ventured from individual contributor manager in the tech, and then you transitioned to become an executive, CEO running the company, I'm assuming some of it was on the job training, OJT, right? Talk to me about that transition, and because it takes a lot of, like, it's a mindset, it's a different mind shift. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. You have to learn. You make mistakes. There's no school for that. You all of a sudden find yourself dealing with things that you may not. Generally, it's completely outside of cybersecurity or IT. It's sometimes HR, sometimes regulatory, sometimes customers you have to deal with. How did you manage to do that, have that transition? And when did you feel that it was the right choice for you? Because did you ever felt like maybe one day it was such a bad day, or you have a good day in the morning and then it's a bad day in the afternoon and another good day in the evening, because that's how it's a roller coaster as an executive? Talk to me about kind of that experience from doing that to moving to a CEO role.
You know, even from Semantic days and other consulting jobs I've had, we were always taught, and remember, I go back to old school, right, with Coca-Cola and AS400. We were always taught you have to run your department, even as an individual, as if you're running your own company. So fortunately, I had some amazing managers and then some great managers and some really terrible managers. But I think in the end, they were all great managers, because I think when I transitioned, I think it took me less than like a day to think about it. So I do it, I don't do it, but it's like picking another job, right? So I said, okay. And then there was a lot of things that I had to learn, but I pull myself back and try to understand, like, am I over my head? And so there's times where I was like, this is not gonna work. And then, understanding the dynamics and also now being the seller side, it was a very, very tough transition. Being a buyer, everybody loves you, the vendors loves you, and then all of a sudden, like, everybody hates you and nobody's your friend. And now everybody thinks you're selling something. Uh, it was very tough. But I think it was just a ego thing, thought hey, I'm Gene, I could do this, or hey, I know a lot of people. Here's my 400 people in my address book, and I can make a call. And when you started realizing that that's not how it was, and that was just a wake up call, and then kind of had to recalibrate. Now I could honestly tell you, in my phone book, I have less than 56 people on my, no joke, in my address book on my phone, there's only 56 people. That includes family.
Is there anything, and it's anything that surprised you that you did not see coming at all from obtaining that role? Things that you thought that is going to look a certain way? Because again, I feel when people think CEO of a company, of a security company, they think you go and you come in the morning, you have a couple customers calls, you have some, you're there to maybe review a contract. It seems pretty glamorous, especially if the company is doing well.
Yes, I go surfing in the morning and I have, day in the end. We're also a private company. I didn't get any outside investors. So it is everything we do and have built is all on hard-earned money that we have in the past. And, from myself down to our CEO or CTO to managing directors, they all work, meaning we all write contracts, we all review. I mean, obviously legal HR stuff is with us, but for most part, a lot of our clients do see me actively engaged in the client. Well, A, because they're lighthouse customers, or B, because there are things that they are talking about I probably have an experience on because I was in their position. So I always tell our entire team you need to understand what they're doing, but you need to also be involved regardless. And this is one of the big things, like, there is really no title within our company. Everybody works.
What do you feel that makes resecurity successful today? If you can pinpoint 2 or 3 things that maybe differentiate you, because there's a lot of security companies out there, a lot of vendors as well as service providers, MSSPs. There are like 70 thousands of them, right? But I think only certain companies grow to your size. What makes you specifically successful in that regards? And then where do you see the company growing, and where do you, if you could again have two or three things that would you're going to do and focus on, you're going to be more successful in the next coming years?
Well, I think first and foremost, I give my hats off to every startup founder, CEOs for the work that they have to put in. And I get it. I'm a smaller size company, but I think any size company, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what CEOs really do. And now that I've been on it, it's a lot of hard work, but I think I have a new respect for a lot of my partners, competitors and vendors in general, and what they do and what they're trying to strive every year over year, how hard it is. As far as what makes us unique, and this is thematic across any of our clients, is that we have people that can deliver, that are trusted. And at the end of the day, Reese Security is a data company. And I always tell people, it's like, look, technology is what we build on top of our data. And we can make it pretty. I mean, we haven't changed your platform's visual UX or UI since we started the company 8 years ago. So that should tell you something. But at the end of the day, Reese Security is powered by humans. Our intelligence is collected by humans. All this SIG and all that stuff is just marketing stuff. At the end of the day, it comes down to the operator, and every operator that works for us, and every operator that contributes to the company. Next, I think if you look at the next 3 to 5 year trajectory, I mean, we see it now. Everybody's talking about AI. I think to be successful in the next 3 to 5 years, I think the most important thing is solving the real problem. Even for us, we're working with several government agencies and trying to be able to have that, simple button that says, like, tell me everything about David and give me 3 things about his business dealings that I should know about. And having that question answered. But I think it's going to come down to he who owns the most unique set of data, and to build things on top of that data, or to create artificial intelligence on top of that data. And I think there's a massive, massive race to collect the most unique data. I think you even see it in the chat GPTs. Every entity like ourselves, social media companies, AI companies, they're harvesting, scraping as much data, but there's only so much finite data, and that every world has been scraped already, right? So, how do you build a real AI? And I think that's
speaking of this, Gene,
AI's got you're all interested. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, no, speaking of this, I don't know if you saw just recently, LinkedIn had opt-in automatically for everybody, that they're saying, well, they're collecting your data for AI learning purposes, which exactly what you just described. They're saying, okay, there's limited, and it seems like they potentially can double the revenue just from selling the
models. Yeah.
The models.
Yeah. Just like if you look at Nielsen, people's behavior on watching TV, all of these data and the data points are now going to be monetized. And which is the scary part, is that once they build that model, the data is no longer important, right? Because they already built the model. At which point the privacy goes bye-bye, because as long as they once and only, it's done. We had one of our customer, I won't name the customer. They wanted to A, move our stuff into their data center, the cloud. And then B, they asked us if we could run their AI on top of our data. Sure. But and I give them yeah, sure, $70 million. And they're like, why is this so expensive? I was like, that's stupid.
But yeah, it's remarkable. I even see there's data brokers now. You can take, I've done, almost 800 of these sessions. That data, I can potentially package it up and throw it over the fence for an LLM company to harvest it, because it's unique, it's generated. So, and I think you're right. There's a finite data, meaning, aside from putting cameras on the street corners and capturing that telemetry, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of digital. What?
But doing that now, even as you and I are recording, how do we know Riverside is not capturing our eyes, hands movements to match her voice to understand our normal behavior pattern and baseline, right? Airport, it's notorious for that.
And so, and it's funny because somebody mentioned, and I was reading the thread of people complaining about the fact that you were not opt in, but you had to opt out from
Yep.
LinkedIn. They were saying, well, that's the problem. It's not AI is displacing us; it's the enterprise using AI to displace us.
Yeah.
They're collecting. They want to know what a security architect or what a marketing person does. How
Yep.
do they think? How do they communicate? So they're taking that and trying to model it, capturing all that interaction and trying to model it so they can take that model as you described, because then the data is no longer, they don't care and they just sell the
Yep.
model to replicate.
It's a scary, I would say, let's not say it's scary. Let's just be realistic. This is the new capitalist dream. I've spoken at a keynote at a Ministry of Defense conference in Middle East about it. I mentioned like they asked me like, what is the next 3 year or 5 year, 10 year things that everybody should be working on? And I said, that's easy, weaponize AI. And every general in there, and this is like every branch of military, every general had a smile on their face except the minister himself. Because I was telling the truth. It's true. How do you weapon? That's what you're supposed to be doing. It's just, it's the next generation warfare. It's just,
And so there's definitely a race, right? And
yeah,
you open up a Pandora box, Gene. So
all
it's your
right.
fault.
That's what I
It's your
do.
fault. So there's a race between
Hmm.
nation states, and there's a lot of resources that are applied to it, right? So
Hmm.
how do we? And then again, it's like beware for what you ask for, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at the accelerator in where is it, Switzerland or somewhere in Europe, where they're trying to create a black hole,
Mm.
right? And they're accelerating neutrons around this unbelievable track. And then it was saying, well, what will happen if it does? If they manage to successfully create a black hole, even if small one, it can swallow us completely. And so the consequences, if you apply the same concept to AI, if we weaponize it and we become proficient enough in weaponizing it, how do you contain it? It's like creating a lab in Wuhan. You're doing, how do you contain it? Well, if we weaponize so well, it would find a way to escape, right? And then what?
Exactly. And there, I mean, I think you're gonna everybody's gonna love you because you said the most important thing. It's just like Wuhan thing, right? When you weaponize something, there's a point where it's going to learn itself out. If it's that smart and if you weaponize it, the reality is the ideal of AI and what we're doing, I think, as a commodity. Um, it's the same thing that we've been doing. Like, here's a virus, go fix it. And now, how do you, let's look at the spread and all this thing. So I think as a citizens of, Earth, there's a lot to be said about, how we should think about things, nature versus science, human versus society, and all these little individual things. But the reality is that we are taking a lot of data, and with social media, all these Zooms, the Riversides, all these things are capturing information. And we keep talking about privacy, 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 AI laws and everything else, but yet we're not protecting the source data, which is us, like our digital identity, our digital footprint, our digital habits. Those are the things that we should be really thinking about protecting. Right. Cyber warfare and as AI cyber and all that stuff, you know, we don't have to. So if you look at the totality, and I'm not saying that we own all the data or we know about all the things, and people love showing like the Iranians are attacking or the Chinese attacking, everybody's attacking everybody, right? Yeah. And it's everybody has their own vernacular. It's not the totality of the view. And if they knew it, why aren't they not stopping it, right? It's the thing that I always ask other my clients and say, well, what makes you better than they are? Like they see this, I was like, great. If they know it, then you shouldn't be worried about having us. what I see is that because we have our own kind of way of looking things, this whole cyber nation state is just going to be one of many things that I think we keep pushing to the people. But I think we need to take a like digital disconnect and look at what we should be doing and stop worrying about AI. I think business improvement AI, great. But cyber AI, yes, we know what's happening, but the totality of the actual event, you're talking about very small percentage compared to what's happening around the world that is actually done and tested by AI. Now, can AI factories be built and make things super efficient? Absolutely. But, you're talking about, let's say, like 24 to 32-year-old, computer whiz geniuses, hacker, whatever you want to call them, all of a sudden they have this AI models to attack at scale. They don't even have to do that. It's
It's
very
like
simple.
script kiddies on steroids.
Yeah,
It
that
is
doesn't
essentially
cost
it's a
like,
script. You have an LLM that is like Rogue that so you
yeah,
download from somewhere and then you kind of run it on anywhere you want, and then the
and it's
consequences of
AI.
that.
And it's
Right,
AI.
right.
Yeah.
So when people come to you and they ask you, okay, so I shouldn't be worried about this so much, but then I should be worried about this. What do you tell them? Because they look up to you, right? They look up to you and say, listen, Gene, like I have this, I'm running the business here. I don't want to be showing up on Yahoo News. I don't want to go through this whole disclosure thing. What do I do? Right?
All on a
What is
tree.
the
No. Um, the any client I go to, anybody I talk to, I always tell them the few basic things. Do you know your inventory? Do you know your network? And when I say network, I don't mean a visual diagram of your network. Do you know the path to your network? And I always tell them, like, if this was your house, do you know how much jewelry you have? Do you know which way these things are going to go? And then I say, like, hardening, patching, and are the
vulnerability
things.
management?
Yeah, it's like, your house. Like, what would you do? It's like, but then I always tell them, if you don't look at it that way, and you're looking at, oh, there's a new Ring alarm, there's a new Google Nest alarm, like that's all you look at, but you don't understand what you're protecting. Then what does it matter, right? So,
And it's coming back to the fundamentals. So when your clients, and it's not necessarily buying, as you mentioned, a new shiny object,
yep,
because there's a lot of them, and vendors will hate you for that because again, they want, but first of all, are they utilizing what they already have? Some companies have a huge technology stack that they're not utilizing, and then also, as you mentioned, figure out what are the crown jewels, like what are the business processes,
yep,
and how do you uncover that? Really, for you to be able to consult on that, you really have to understand the business.
yep. Keyword, key.
So how do you spend time? And it's funny because a lot of this heavy lifting has nothing to do with technology at all. Like by the time you get to technology, is already you're like 80% inside the sales process in terms of what you need to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, this goes back to the cyber team and IT team not spending time with the business and educating them what they do, but also understanding what they do. I make sure also my team members in the past when I worked for organizations to go to these business meetings, find out what new the television is doing or what the games division is doing, what are the new things, and so meet with them, build relationship. And this is part of intelligence, right? That's what we do. And I think all of my experience led me to where I'm at and being what I do. And call it what it is, like, social engineering or whatever. I like to tell my kid, like, "Nah, I'm just a bad guy going after the bigger bad guy. That's all I do." And I think that there's no perfect formula, but we just need to start picking off our gloves and hats and talking about how we're techie, but like start asking the right question. Like, what is it that the business do? What am I trying to protect? Why do I have 10 different endpoint agents? Like, because I come from IT, I sympathize. So I try to streamline as much as possible without affecting them because they're my partners. they're the one that's going to make me successful. And it's in my best interest to not, play whack-a-mole.
And you're in a position to tell. I'm sure you have a lot of stories in your arsenal because I'm sure you get the phone calls every once in a while and basically saying, "Okay, help me." Can
Yeah.
you? Because it's unfortunate. That's how it is, and typically it happens on a Friday afternoon before the long weekend or something like that, where you have to talk to me about what do you do in a situation like that? How do you help these customers? How do you deal? And sometimes you have to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
They're not easy conversation to have.
A lot of times because of the heterogeneous environment and the kind of the technology digital spread that we have, and people know that I always talk like this. Is it below the horizon, above the horizon? Meaning, is it inside your network? Is it outside your network? And we use code terms mainly because, we don't want to be audited. But they know that when I talk like that, they know something that we're talking about a breach. And part of it is like, I always ask them, like, they tell me what really happened so I can help you. And we have NDA confidentiality retainers or whatever you want to call it. Even as a friend, I said, I need to understand what really happened. Don't just tell me what you want to tell people. I can't help you if I don't know. And that's literally how we've been able to build trust. And we're talking about everybody from like MOI, Minister of Interior, and Minister of Defense, State Security, you name it. We odds and ends of people and stories about these people, but it's really getting down to that level of building that trust.
And governments are in a unique position where they typically have limited resources, a lot of data. Their attack surface is almost endless, and they are also a target because they do have some valuable data that is that somebody else wants, and it can be nation state or otherwise. And I agree with you. You had a statement saying, and I don't like it when we agree too much on things, Gene, but I agree with you on that point, saying that most of it is revenue generation. There's somebody out there trying to make money. It's not necessarily so much about nation state. I think like majority of how do you help? And the government is not. I wouldn't say that they're behind, not so much, but they have unique challenges. Let's say that. How do you help these particular customers to get into a level set, meaning that they're not as vulnerable, or because they have these unique requirements, as I mentioned, like the size, the lack of resources sometimes, lack of technology and so on, to really make sure that they also don't want to be on the front page news.
This is actually my selling point. No, I'm just kidding. I tell everybody the same thing, including our government and every other government. We could talk about vulnerability and risk all day long because we know our inventory digital spread, our attack surface is ginormous. So what I always tell them is like, look, that's never going to change. It is something that you have to deal with. You need to, streamline, minimize. I could tell them everything that they already know. The problem is, are they going to actually be able to do it? Like, remember Y2K kind of stuff, right? So what I tell them is like, look, you guys below the horizon, there's a thing that's always going to happen unless you patch, harden, and whatever, do best as you can. But I tell everybody now, you need to start thinking differently. You need to think about threat risk, meaning like the CMMC, everybody talks about vulnerability risk scorecard, and you fix something, you get a better grade. This is not elementary school. So what I always try to tell them is like, look, threat risk is something that happens outside of your firewall. Do you know who's targeting you? Or do you have material breach? Like, what is the watchtower or the Overwatch program you have that prevent or identifies these events while you're doing your day-to-day business as usual? And that's the kind of the bridge that we try to build with Breach Security. And everybody, I tell them like, look, I don't care what you guys do. I don't care what you buy. If they want to get in, they're going to get in. It's very simple. The question is when and how. But until then, you could talk about all the technology, but if you don't put a good patching and hygiene in practice, it doesn't make a difference. If I could just add one thing, I would tell you in one of my media company jobs, I was hired to literally build a VM and vulnerability patching program. And with collaboration with IT, it took about a month to build relationship. But after that, we were able to deploy 24,000 agents to server desktops networks and implement about 80% of CIS level 1 in about 2-week time frame, because we both agreed and built that trust.
And then it boils down to personal relationship again, the human element. And then I spoke to a CISO and mentioned that, it's part of any fundamentally successful program is you have to build that personal relationship and trust with the stakeholders, because otherwise it's not going to be successful. And that's where a synthetic CISO is not going to do a great job, because it's very tough for them, for the quote unquote AI engine to create relationships. So just as I know you got to go, and I heard the bell ring, in terms of where things are going, are there any particular, aside from this AI thing, any particular technologies that you would say that are exciting, aside from the fundamental, of course? The other piece of this side of the question is that there's a lot of regulatory pressures coming from the government to be in compliance. CMMC is one for the Department of Defense, but there's others, and it trickles down to the rest of the country, to private sector as well. Do you feel that that is necessary, that private sector would not be able to protect themselves unless there's this pressure from above, being compliance?
No, anybody could be compliant, anybody could do a good job in patching. All of this can be done. I think people just need to start working together. If you're looking at like DoD or like any military environment with excess of 50 to 100,000 endpoints, right? Oh, it's hard to patch, or we have this complexity. It's like, well, it's like, I almost want to tell people, like, stop all the projects and then just minimize your risk and threat and vulnerability footprint, and then just get it up to where it needs to be. It's like, we do that with cars. I don't know why we can't do that with technology. Car's old, car gets old, bad, like, let's replace it. Like, we need to start thinking it that way, and that it's not a commodity that's going to last on the shelf long time. It's something that we're going to refresh. I'm sure every computer manufacturer love me for this. It should. Why does it have to? It's like an automobile. Why does it have to last more than 5 years?
And we do it in the airlines industry, right?
Yeah.
We sunset these. The fact that there's graveyards full of like jets, because we have regulation, and I think we're mature enough as an industry to start applying some of these to us as well. And even though we've been doing this for a long time, it's still in a lot of sense like a wild, wild west. You can still have Windows XP running, Windows 7.
It's still true.
Well, you can try to patch those as well. And it's really remarkable. After all said and done, there's still, the CrowdStrike thing happens, or there's like the SolarWinds, or there's put in the next thing, and then every time something like that happens, there's ambulance chasers that some of these vendors say, well, if you had me, well, not going to happen, or there's a zero chance for ransomware, or zero chance for breach, or zero breach, or just go to the next conference, you'll see all of that, and it's a lot of noise, and I think it diminished some of the credibility we have as an industry.
My method of like evaluating people is like, hey, do you drink? And they're like, oh yeah, it's like, do you drink it straight or do you lick it in a cocktail? Like, oh, I love cocktails. Like, okay, good. I just wanted to know that.
Gene, it's been a real pleasure, very much so. Tell me about how do people get in touch with you or the company, and to know more about what you guys do, services or consulting or whatever the case may be. What's the easiest way?
Just go to www.resecurity.com. Don't message me on LinkedIn. That's not me. I'm just kidding.
It's the avatar, whatever whatever the bot is. Again, thank you very much for joining the show today. Much appreciated. Looking forward to, hopefully we'll do this again sometime soon. And until then, for all those who join, stay safe online as well as offline. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you again.